I'm 80 years old now, and I've watched a lot of seasons come and go. And if there's one thing I've learned after all this time in the dirt, it's that when the world gets uncertain, and it does, more often than people like to admit, it's the garden that stands between you and hunger. Not the store, not luck, the garden. I'm going to share 11 crops with you, not because they're pretty or easy or popular, but because they'll actually keep you alive when times get hard. These are the plants that produce real food, even on a small piece of ground. Let me start with something you've probably never planted. I hadn't either, for most of my gardening life. It's a grain, amaranth. I didn't know about amaranth until I was well into my 50s. Spent 3 decades growing the usual things, never questioning it. Then one cold winter I started reading about what people used to grow before modern agriculture took over, and I found this ancient grain from Peru. Turns out it'll give you roughly 4.5 million calories from 1 acre. Now, I know numbers don't mean much until you compare them. If you raise chickens on that same acre, real free-range chickens, not the kind packed into sheds, you'd only get about 110,000 calories. With cattle, maybe 180,000. But amaranth, 4.5 million. That's when it made sense to me why grain crops fed whole civilizations. I've been growing a type called Golden Giant the last few years. The seed heads get so heavy they bend the stalks over, and a single head can hold close to a pound of seed. It's a striking plant, tall, and with these deep crimson or gold tassels that catch the light. What kept me growing it, though, wasn't just the yield. It's that amaranth doesn't demand rich soil the way corn does. It doesn't need all that nitrogen. My soil's better now after years of working it, but when I first started, the ground was worn out and stubborn. Amaranth would have thrived back then. The seeds are so small you can barely see them, but some varieties pop like tiny popcorn kernels. And unlike wheat, which I respect, don't get me wrong, you don't need all that equipment to thresh it and grind it. Amaranth is simpler, easier on the body when you're trying to do everything yourself. I learned that lesson after one too many seasons wrestling with crops that fought me every step of the way. Now, the 10th crop, a nut tree. And most people won't even consider nut trees because they think it takes a lifetime. And with walnuts or pecans, they're right. You're planting for your grandchildren. But there's one nut tree that doesn't make you wait like that, the hazelnut. Some folks call it a filbert tree. What amazed me when I first planted hazelnuts was how fast they started producing. 2 years in, you might see your first little cluster of nuts. By year 6 or 7, each tree's giving you 20-30 pounds. If you got a few of them, that's serious food. Serious calories. Nearly 8 million per acre, actually. I wish I'd known about hazelnuts 40 years ago. I spent so much time dreaming about walnut trees and pecan groves, thinking that was the only way to get tree nuts. But hazelnuts, they're practical. Even if you've only got a corner of your yard, you can grow a few and have a steady supply of fat and protein without waiting half your life for it. Number 9 is one you'd expect if you know anything about nutrition. Kale. I'm not growing kale for the calories. It only gives you about 3.5 million per acre, which is low compared to some of these others. But I'm growing it because your body needs more than just calories. It needs nutrients, minerals, things that keep you strong. And kale delivers that better than almost anything else you can plant. Here's something I figured out the hard way about kale and all its relatives, the brassicas. That family includes Brussels sprouts, cabbage, broccoli, all of them. If you let them all flower and go to seed at the same time in the same garden, they're pollen mixes. And the next year, you get these strange hybrid plants that don't grow right. I call them frankenplants. So I made a rule for myself. I only grow one type of brassica for seed saving at a time. And for me, that's kale. It's the easiest to grow, and it's got the most nutrition packed into those dark crinkled leaves. After enough seasons, you stop trying to do everything and just focus on what works. Number 8, beets. Beets are one of those crops that do 2 jobs at once. They're packed with nutrition, good for your blood, good for your energy. I've read they help with circulation, and I believe it. I've also read they improve endurance, which makes sense when you think about how people used to rely on them during long winters. But here's the other thing. Beet store. You can keep them in a cool cellar all the way until the next harvest comes in. Some varieties grow fast. You can pull them in 50 days if you need food quick. Others, like those big mammoth mangle beets I tried years back, take 100 days, but they're worth it. Sweetest beets I've ever tasted. Some people only grow them for livestock, but I don't know why. They taste better than any other beet I've grown. Beets give you about 10 million calories per acre, which puts them up there with the best. And they just sit in storage, waiting, not asking for anything. That's the kind of crop you need when you can't count on anything else. Number 7, sunflowers. I love sunflowers, always have. They're like having a nut tree, except you don't wait years. You get your harvest in one season. The seeds are rich, oily, almost like eating nuts, and the plants themselves are a joy to walk past. Those big golden heads following the sun all day. Harvesting them is easy, too. You just cut the heads off when they're ready and hang them somewhere dry. If the weather turns bad, you can finish drying them in a shed or basement. No fuss. They give you around 5 million calories per acre. Not the highest on this list, but still solid. And there's something about sunflowers that just feels right in a garden. They're generous plants. Number 6, fruit trees. Now, fruit trees don't give you the kind of calories grains do, but they give you enough to matter. Peaches will get you about 8 million calories per acre. Apples, 9 million. Pears can hit 10 million. That's up there with beets. The other thing about fruit is you can preserve it. You can dry it and have it all year. There are apple varieties like Evercrisp that'll keep in cold storage for months, maybe even until the next harvest if you're careful. Or you can make preserves, can them, put them up in jars. Fruit trees are also just pleasant to have around. They bloom in spring, they give you shade in summer, they feed you in fall. After decades of growing them, I can't imagine a garden without at least a few. Number 5, beans. Beans are good for the soil. They put nitrogen back in, and they're good for you. If you're eating grains like Amaranth alongside beans, you get what they call a complete protein. Your body gets everything it needs. Beans also store well. That's important. You want crops you can put away and not worry about them spoiling. They're easy to grow, though getting the dried beans out of the pods takes some effort. And I learned a trick years ago. Put them in a pillowcase and beat it against the ground. The shells break off and you just shake out the debris. Calorie-wise, beans aren't the highest, Pinto beans give you about 2.5 million per acre. Soybeans get you closer to 6 million. And I know people worry about soy, but I've looked into it. The research doesn't support the fears. It's fine. Good even. Number 4, squash. Squash is strange because it's really 2 crops in one. You've got the flesh, which is sweet and filling when it's cooked. And then you've got the seeds inside, which are full of fat and protein. Some squash varieties will store for a year or two just sitting on your kitchen counter. You cure them in the sun for a bit, bring them inside, and they're good. If you have a bad growing year, yes, you might still have squash left from the year before. That's the kind of security you need. I've been experimenting with different varieties, trying to figure out which ones store the longest and taste the best. It's a slow process, but that's how you learn, one season at a time. Number 3, Jerusalem artichoke. This one's a crop most people have never tried, maybe never even heard of. It's native to this continent, which surprises people. Some folks call it by another name, starts with an F, because it has a reputation for causing gas. It does for some people. For others, it doesn't bother them at all. You'll have to try it and see. But here's why I'm including it. Jerusalem artichokes produce an enormous amount of food, 12 to 15 million calories per acre. That's one of the top 3 on this whole list. There's a history to this plant. During the 30 Years' War back in the 1600s in Germany, people survived on Jerusalem artichokes when everything else failed. Even the government studied them during wartime and wondered why more people didn't grow them. They're also one of the easiest crops I've ever grown. You plant them once and they come back on their own. The only problem is getting rid of them if you change your mind. They're stubborn that way, and they can stay in the ground all winter. You can dig them up in the fall, or you can leave them and dig them whenever you need them, even in frozen ground if you're determined. For someone with poor soil, and I've had poor soil most of my life, Jerusalem artichokes are forgiving. They'll grow where other things won't. Number 2, corn. I'm not growing corn for nutrition. I'm growing it for calories. And when times get hard, calories matter more than people realize. Corn produces one of the highest yields of any crop, 15 million calories per acre if your soil's decent, maybe more if it's rich. What's interesting is that corn didn't exist in Europe until the 1500s or 1600s. It came from this side of the world. A lot of the highest yielding crops, Jerusalem artichokes, corn, and the last one I'll talk about, all came from the Americas. They just produce more food per acre than the old world crops ever could. I don't grow sweet corn. I grow grain corn, the kind you dry and grind into cornmeal. You can make cornbread, polenta, all kinds of things. The corn dries right on the stalk, so you don't have to do anything special. Just harvest it when it's ready and shell the kernels off the cob. And now, the final crop. Actually, it's 2 crops, though they're not even related. Potatoes, both the regular kind and sweet potatoes. Some regions can't grow regular potatoes well. Some can't grow sweet potatoes, but almost everywhere can grow one or the other, and both of them are incredibly productive. There have been times in history when people survived almost entirely on potatoes, whole populations, and sweet potatoes. There are cultures that still eat them as the main part of their diet. In Papua New Guinea, 90% of calories come from sweet potatoes. In Okinawa, it used to be 70%, and those people became some of the longest lived in the world. Regular potatoes can give you 15, maybe even 20 million calories per acre, depending on where you are. That's almost unbelievable. And since you can live off them if you had to, they're one of the most important crops you can grow. Sweet potatoes give you less, about 8 million per acre, but what they lack in calories they make up for in nutrition and taste, especially the Japanese varieties, the Murasaki type. I could eat those every single day and never get tired of them. You can bake them into chips or just bake them soft. They don't need butter or anything. Just a little salt, and they're perfect. I've got sweet potatoes from last year's harvest still stored right now, and we're already planting this year's crop. That's the kind of crop you want, one that bridges the gap between seasons. So those are my 11 crops, the ones I rely on, the ones that have carried people through hard times before and will again. If you think there's a crop I should have mentioned, I'd like to hear about it. Leave it in the comments. And if you want to learn more about why corn matters so much, or how to grow it right, I've got another whole discussion on that over at Grow Root Gardening. You won't want to miss it. Take care of your garden. It'll take care of you.